Hello everyone, it's Scott, and we're back for Final Fantasy weekend previews. We got a few cards to talk about, some rares and mythics that I think we'll see standard play. But before we do, remember to like and subscribe to get further content like this throughout Final Fantasy, spoiler season, and beyond. And if you need cards from the set, you can check us out on the web at caffeinatedgamers.tcgplayerpro.com to get all the cards you might need. Alright, so let's dive in. So the first is Buster Sword. For 3 mana, you get an artifact that's an equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+2. And whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Then you may cast a spell from your hand with mana value less than or equal to that damage without paying its mana cost. And equip cost is 2. So this to me is a definite playable standard card. I mean, it is 5 mana to get it attached to a creature, but if you get it attached, you're basically going to be getting free mana every single turn to cast spells depending on what you're putting it on. So imagine you put this on, a Heartfire Hero or anything in the mono red deck that has trample and you're going to get damage through. So I think this definitely has standard playability, and I think a number of different decks will try to use it. Next we've got Nibelheim of Flame. For 2 and 2 red mana. You get a sorcery, and you get to choose target creature you control. It deals damage equal to its power to each other creature. If this spell was cast from a graveyard, discard your hand and draw 4 cards. It has flashback for 5 and 2 red mana. So this is an interesting card. I think if you're playing it for its flashback cost, I think then it's going to be worth the value of it. But right now in standard, I'm not sure if this has a home, but the ability to, in essence deal 6-7 damage potentially to all the creatures on the battlefield and basically kind of resetting the battlefield, I think that is good enough to see standard play. Particularly if we do get a kind of big red deck, this I think kind of fits into that kind of build where you're using this to kind of clean up the board, and then in the mid to late game you're dropping all of your big creatures and your opponent doesn't have much to do anymore. Next we've got Summon Knights of Round. For 6 and 2 white mana. You get an enchantment creature that's a Saga Knight with Indestructible and is a 3/3. And on chapters 1 through 4, you get to create 3 2/2 white knight creature tokens. And then on chapter 5, Ultimate End, other creatures you control get +2/+2 until end of turn. Put an indestructible counter on each of them. So this is a good card. The problem is it's 8 mana. So you'd have to ramp into this, I think, to make it good in standard, or you'd have to reanimate it to make it good in standard. And if you can find a way to cheat this into play, then I think it is a good card. And because of that, I think there will be people who are trying to do that, figuring out how to cheat this in, because getting in essence 12 2/2 white knight creature tokens over those 4 turns, that's a pretty significant amount of board state to build up. And then when you go to chapter 5, they all become 4/4s, they all get indestructible. So I think this is a card that will see some standard play, but it's the question is what kind of deck wants it, and I don't think it's going to be more than a 1 or 2 of in those kind of decks. But it definitely is a card that I see seeing standard play. Next we've got Serah. For 1, a green and a white mana. You get a legendary creature that's a human citizen and is a 2/2. And the first legendary creature spell you cast each turn costs 2 less to cast. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 2 or more other legendary creatures, you may transform Serah. And when you do, you get Crystallized Serah. And again, the first legendary creature spell you cast each turn costs 2 less to cast, and legendary creatures you control get +2/+2. So I think this is a very good card for Legends Matters decks, and I think it will see play. We've seen legendary decks over the last couple of years, popular at times and very good in standard at times, and I think Serah is going to definitely help make Legends again playable in standard. Next, we've got Machinist Arsenal for 4 and a white mana. You get an artifact that's an equipment with job select. And when this creature enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 colorless hero creature token, then attach this to it. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 for each artifact you control and is an artificer in addition to its other types. In Machina, equip cost is 4, so it costs 4 mana to attach it to something else. So if we indeed have an Equipment Matters deck, this is a great card for that deck. This is kind of the top end of your curve, and if you can give this trample somehow, then you're probably going to be trampling over and winning the game in 1 or 2 turns because of Machinist Arsenal. So definitely standard playable. The question is, are we going to have a dedicated equipment deck for it to fall into? Next, we've got Saj Katsroy for 3 and a green mana. You get a legendary creature that's a human pilot and is a 3/3. And when Saj Katsroy enters, you may search your library for a bird or basic land card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. And whenever Saj Katsroy attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, then double the number of +1/+1 counters on that creature. So this is another card that I think is standard playable. The question is there a deck that's going to want it? So is there a bird deck that's going to want Saj? Or is there a +1/+1 counter deck that's going to want this? And if there is, then I think this is going to be a very powerful card in those decks, because anything that's going to double your +1/+1 counters is a good card for standard. Next, we've got some lower rarity cards for the weekend. Next, we've got Summon Primal Garuda for 3 and a white mana. You get an enchantment creature that's a Saga Harpy with flying and is a 3/3. On Chapter 1, Aerial Blast, this creature deals 4 damage to target tapped creature an opponent controls. Then on Chapters 2 and 3, you get Slipstream. Another target creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains flying until end of turn. So 4 mana, I think this is, limited playable, but I don't think we'll see much, if any, standard play from it. Next, we've got Summon Anima for 4 and 2 black mana. You get an enchantment creature that's a Saga Hora with Menace and is a 4/4. On Chapters 1, 2, and 3, you get Pain, you draw a card, and you lose 1 life. And on Chapter 4, you get Oblivion. Each opponent sacrifices a creature of their choice and loses 3 life. So, to me, this is, another one of those examples of something that just costs too much. If this was like 4 mana, then yes, this would be really good. But at 6 mana, it's probably not going to see any standard play. Next, we've got You're Not Alone for 1 white mana. You get an instant. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If you control 3 or more creatures, you get +4/+4 until end of turn instead. So if we do have a deck where we're trying to, kind of spell sling that is in white, I think this is a card that certainly fits into that. And we still do have Leyline of Resonance in standard. So if that deck becomes popular again and you want to put it into white, I think this is a card that certainly would fit into that. In limited, I think it'll be a very good combat spell. Next, we've got Ice Flan for 4 and 2 blue mana. You get an Elemental Ooze, that's a 5/4. And when this creature enters, tap target artifact or creature an opponent controls, put a stun counter on it. And it has Island Cycling for 2 mana. So I think, again, this is a limited card that will definitely see play in limited. Being able to tap something down on your opponent's side is a good ability in limited. But the 6 mana, I think, is going to make it too costly for standard. Next, we've got Quina Q Gourmet for 2 and a green mana. You get a legendary creature that's a Q and is a 2/3. If 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus a 1/1 green frog creature token are created instead. And you can pay 2 and sacrifice a frog and put a +1/+1 counter on Quina. So I think this is limited playable, but I just don't, even though it does have that ability to add that additional token when a token enters play, I just don't know if our token builds are going to want this in standard. In green right now doesn't have a lot of token generation, so my thought is this is a limited card only. Next, we've got Reno and Rude for 1 and a black mana. You can legendary creature that's a human assassin with menace and is a 2/1. And whenever Reno and Rude deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of that player's library. Then you may sacrifice another creature or artifact. If you do, you may play the exile card this turn, and mana of any type can be spent to cast it. So on the surface, it looks like it might be playable in standard, but the fact that you have to sacrifice another creature or an artifact to be able to cast that card, and then you have to pay mana for it as well, I think that's just too much for standard. Alright, our last 2 cards of the day. Our first is Poo Poo UFO for 2 mana. You get an artifact creature that's a construct alien and is a 0/4 with flying. And you can tap it. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield, or for 3 mana until end of turn, this creature's base power becomes equal to the number of towns you control. So this is our first card that's a town payoff. So we'll have to see if there are other ones, but if we do have a towns matter deck, then I think this is a card that certainly would go in that. And the fact that you can tap it to put an additional land into play can, in essence, accelerate the power of Poo Poo UFO. And our last card of the day is Instant Ramen. For 2 mana, you get an artifact that's a food with flash, and when this artifact enters the battlefield, you get to draw a card. So 2 mana, artifact, draw a card, and you can pay 2 and sacrifice this artifact to gain 3 life. So I think this is probably nothing more than a limited card, but maybe the Simulacrum Synthesizer deck might want this as a way of getting some additional card draw in that build, and this becomes something that you can then sacrifice later in the game, to get some value out of it. All right, so those are the cards from the weekend from Final Fantasy. Let me know what you think in the comments, and remember to like and subscribe to get further content like this throughout Final Fantasy season and beyond. And I've left a link here to my entire playlist for Final Fantasy preview videos. Thanks for staying to the end of the video, and I will see you in the next one.